don't know why I'm talking in a voice like that.
Are you channeling a specific leader that you've worked with, me? Because I'm loving that you actually had a voice.
Honestly, was, yes. I'm like Whoopi Goldberg in Ghost when the great spirit has entered me.
The spirit of poor leadership has entered you. Welcome to How to Take the Lead, the podcast where we challenge the myths and stereotypes of what it means to be a leader today and help you to succeed in post without compromise. I'm Lee Griffith.
And I'm Carrie-Anne Wade, and together we will be your guides, questioning everything we've ever learnt about leadership, sharing our experiences along the way and inspiring you to make a real impact in your role.
Visit howtotakethelead.com for show notes, past episodes and to join our community.
Enjoy this episode. Hello and welcome to the last episode of Series 3 of How to Take the Lead. Is it Series 3 or Series 2?
It is Series 3. I was like, I looked at you like that because she said the last episode. I was like, oh, we're not finishing really. But then I realised you meant of the series.
Yeah. And then I was like, is it Series 3 or Series 2? I've confused myself.
We recorded this very early, people.
Yeah,
we've not had enough caffeine.
An early morning recording for us, which is unusual. So we're a bit bleary-eyed and trying to work out what's going on. So welcome to this episode of How to Take the Lead. I'll do all the usual just in case you're a new listener. If you are a new listener, you can subscribe on your podcast platform of choice. You can even subscribe over on our YouTube channel if you would prefer to watch us rather than just hear us. And you can get involved in our community over on Substack with like-minded modern leaders who are working with us to challenge the status quo. So you can get extra bonus content. You can read additional thoughts on each episode, get involved in conversations, and launching soon will be our book club, which is very exciting. So there's lots of ways you can get involved. You can also catch up with us on the socials. We're on Instagram and on Twitter at How to Take the Lead. And all of that info is on our website, howtotakethelead.com. Hopefully that's everything.
You've nailed it. Episode 10, you've nailed it.
It's only taken 10 episodes of this series to nail it. And I think I only said once as well, but we'll listen back and I probably didn't. So how are you, Lee, before we get into the episode? I says that she's got a mouthful of tea.
I'm all right. I'm as I say, first cuppa. You're the first person I've spoken to today. Yeah, I was never a fan when I was in corporate life of doing early morning meetings. So you're going to see the side of me really in this episode. So I apologise.
Are we just discovering that we're both not morning people? Because I'm not a morning person either, but I'm not sure I knew that about you, Lee. I thought you were like up and at 'em sprightly at like 6 whilst I was still groaning away going, do I have to get out of bed?
Well, I get up early, but that is not with any willingness. It just happens.
It's not with full of vim and vigour. But anyway, right. So, having just learned something new about you, Lee, that feels like an apt start to an episode that is about staying curious. So today we are going to talk about curiosity and leadership and whether or not you are curious, how you get curious as a leader, and how you might decide to stay curious. So, curiosity and leadership is something that I've started to consider more, I guess, over the last few years of my own career, perhaps as I've branched out to step outside of my comfort zone a bit more, doing things like this with you, Lee, reading more, absorbing more like a sponge. But it's also something that I've heard others talk more about in relation to continuous learning, innovation in organisations and impacts on culture are probably the areas where I've heard this sort of word curiosity come up more in relation to leadership. So I thought we should explore maybe what we mean when we talk about leadership and curiosity and whether or not we think it's a core leadership skill. And how do we define curiosity in leadership? So I'm just going to pose that massive question to you first thing in the morning.
When I'm not feeling the most curious. So for me, curiosity is all about the art of asking questions, but not just of other people or of people. It's this thing of having I see it as like an internal and external curiosity. So the curiosity you have about who you are as a leader and what you stand for and what you want to achieve and all of that kind of stuff. And then there's a curiosity about others and what's going on external to and around you. So as I say, I don't think it's just a people thing. It can be an environment, it can be a context thing as well. Absolutely, it's a core skill. I think it's very aligned with your communications and engagement skills, actually. I think it's part and parcel of that. And it's that art almost of being able to put yourself in the shoes of either other people or other situations so that you're really exploring something from all angles.
Yeah, I really like it's me. Oh, it's really getting to me because I'm like, oh, it's making me feel curious now. This is exciting. It's all the stuff I love. So yeah, I think I like that. Position it as like internal and external, so you can be curious about yourself as a leader, but also part of your role, I guess, as a leader, isn't it, is to be curious about what's happening in your organisation for your stakeholders, clients, whatever.
Yeah.
So
It's
yeah,
both. It's not either or, I would say.
yeah, and yeah, yes, I am agreeing with that, and I'm like, absolutely, because it would kind of be weird, I guess, to be totally curious and inquisitive about your own leadership style, but without having that external element to it in terms of the impact. So for me, kind of the things that you've touched on that definitely resonate for me around that sort of growth, I think, like growth as a leader, growth for your organisation. And there was something for me about adaptability as well, because I think, we've talked before about the current climate that leaders are operating in and that need perhaps to be adaptable to change, or what, when something happens, how you respond to it. And I think it's sometimes through that curiosity that it can enable you to be more adaptable. And I guess on a grander scale for me, there's something about transformation and innovation, organisationally within a team, whatever that might look like for you, being led by that curious nature that you might have as a leader or a leadership team. So it's sounding quite exciting and like something that I definitely want to explore more. But I guess in the space of benefits, so what are the benefits of leadership curiosity to you and your organisation? And I think you've touched on one around communication and connection, which is something we've talked about in an entire episode and is probably a thread that goes through many of our conversations. But for me, that curiosity definitely helps to improve communication and connection. But, what are the other benefits of being a curious leader, I guess, is my question to you, Lee.
There's have you read Matthew Said's Rebel Ideas book?
Mostly because you recommend a lot through our conversations, Lee. So
there's a section in that book where he's talking about diverse thinking, and he references a study that Google did into psychological safety in the workplace. And it showed that where teams apply psychological safety, they were less likely to leave, more likely to harness diverse ideas from each other, bring in more revenue, and were rated as being twice as effective by the senior leadership team. And for me, that summarises the environment, I suppose, that you need to create to have a curious team and people in the team. And I think then that therefore shows the benefit that you can reap if you create the right environment for people. So absolutely, I think if you've got that curiosity, it completely helps the bottom line of the organisation. It helps morale, helps create that sense of safety in an organisation that's really important. We've done a whole other episode on that, so I won't talk about that too much. And I think there's also something about if you as a leader are demonstrating curiosity as a behaviour, then that is almost giving permission for other people to be like that as well. So if they see you being curious, they will be curious too. If you shut things down, you're removing that safety. So I think there are whole cultural ramifications in how an organisation behaves based on how much or little you are in terms of curiosity.
And I think sometimes, as you've been talking, for me, I wonder if it's the word curiosity that might be a bit off-putting for some types of leader and leadership team, because I guess I don't know, it just sounds like I'm going to say it sounds like quite a fun word. Like, it doesn't sound like a traditional word that you would use when you describe leadership. I wonder if when you can then talk about the benefits of being curious, that's when it really hits home to leaders, because what the research shows and what we're talking about is the fact that it does have an impact on organisational performance. So being a curious leader and creating that culture of curiosity, exploration, transformation, innovation enables the organisation to perform better. And maybe the word curious doesn't perhaps capture that in a way that would hit home with some of those more performance-focused leaders.
Yeah, I mean, that links to the whole conversation we had in previous episodes about what style of leader you are. I talked about the DISC, and if you're like a D leader, you're very directed, you probably are asking fewer questions because you think you know the answer, or you think that, your way is the way that you want to get things done. And I've certainly worked with leaders who used to think a bit like, oh, if I communicate too much, I'm going to slow things down. If I engage people, I'm going to slow things down. That notion of, oh, if I ask too many questions, we're going to have all these things that just going to confuse the picture. I don't know why I'm talking in a voice like that.
Are you channeling a specific leader that you've worked with, me? Because I'm loving that you actually had a voice.
See what I was yes. I'm like Whoopi Goldberg in Ghost when the spirit has entered me.
The spirit of poor leadership has entered you. We must banish it. Like, we need to get that gone. We don't want that.
But I'm also a bit scared that it came so easily though.
Oh dear, I've lost the thread of what we're talking about.
I've also got in my head the whole way through, to the point that from the time that you said we're going to be talking about curiosity, I'm just thinking of the 80s band Curiosity Killed the Cat. And I love, I've got their vinyl downstairs. I think that might be my soundtrack for tonight.
Oh, I love how our conversation goes ways that I do not expect. Whoopi Goldberg ghost reference and Curiosity Killed the Cat.
For any
what you get for 8:30 in the morning from
I know.
By the way.
I was going to say, for any younger listeners, these references may mean nothing to you. We'll perhaps put some links in the show notes. So we were talking about the benefits of leadership curiosity, and whether or not it's that phrase curiosity that perhaps puts some performance-focused leaders off. You did your performance-focused leader voice, which was, interesting for me. I had that experience with you before, Lee. But I think what we're saying is, we talked about the culture, haven't we? We've talked about creating psychological safety, but, being curious as a leader in your organisation enables both you and those in your organisation to create those healthier work relationships, be focused on learning opportunities and improvement, which is only hopefully going to lead to better decision making, more effective problem solving, increased innovation. So for me, it feels like being curious as a leader is a win-win. I'm not sure why you wouldn't be curious as a leader. Yeah. But you mentioned that, and as did I, that for being curious as a leader doesn't come naturally to some people, and you've worked with people who don't have perhaps that more open approach. And naturally, for me, I am quite an inquisitive person. So I feel like I'm already operating in a mindset where I'm happy to be open-minded and I want to ask lots of questions, probably sometimes too many for some people, and I really annoy them. But is it something that can be learned, being curious, if it's not your natural way of operating? Like, how do you get into that headspace if you're naturally not a curious person? And what advice do you have for me when I may be being over curious?
Well, I was gonna say there is a really fine line between being curious and being intrusive, and I think leaders, and you're not just with leaders, in people, and I've had this often with people who are trying to become better allies, for example, and then they put the burden on someone that's in that maybe protected group or minoritized group, and they start asking loads of questions and get really personal about stuff, and actually they create more of an issue by being intrusive rather than inquisitive. So there is a real fine line, I think, sometimes. For me, it's around what's your motivation behind learning more and how genuine you are in your motivation to others. So if another person thinks that you're interested in them genuinely, they're going to open up. If they think there's another reason,
it's a motive behind it.
Then or it's seen as a bit unusual in the way that you're questioning all of that, then I think that's when the barriers are put up. People could be offended by that curiosity. So I just wanted to say that because you mentioned about being too curious. But to come back to your point around, can you learn curiosity? I absolutely think you can. I mean, coaching, I would say this as a coach, but the whole art of coaching is around curiosity and helping others to explore things that they wouldn't naturally be thinking of, and challenging their thinking and using questions in a way to help people explore new opportunities and new thinking. For me, I think leaders, there's several areas you could be working on, either with yourself or with someone else. So, you learning to let go, that your way is the best way, and not assuming what the answers are is something that you can work on. Learning to try new things rather than just sitting in your comfort zone that you always sit in, getting comfortable with risk taking and making mistakes. Learning how to question properly. So often when people ask questions, the questions can be closed questions, for example. So they're not really exploring in a curious way. They're leading and directing in their question, even though they think they're not. Avoiding why questions, because that can often bring defensiveness in people. If you lead with, well, why have you done that?
Why do you do it that way?
Yeah. So the questions and the nature of the questions is something that you can learn and you trial and error often to learn how to listen. So come from a point of listening to understand rather than listening to be heard. And we've talked before in previous episodes around the notion of active listening, and actually most times when people have a conversation, they're already playing through what's the next point I want to make, what's the point I want to get across, what's my next question, and they're not really listening with all of their senses to understand what's being said. You can also learn how to reframe and refrain from judgment, because often judgment can close down your curiosity if you're already assuming or you think you know something. So all of those are examples of things that you can be working on, and probably, even leaders who might be great at that will still be working on all those areas. It's not that you either have it or you don't. These are things that you're constantly striving to know more about yourself and about others.
Yeah, and the point you make about the listening, I think, is really important, because I think people can mistake curiosity for just being about the questions, like the asking and the trying to find out, but you're not actually going to find anything out if you don't genuinely and actively listen to the responses that you're getting. So I think that is a really important reminder that isn't just about that, I'm working out how I'm going to go in and firing loads of questions at people. It's actually about really trying to uncover kind of evidence and feedback and genuinely listen to what people are saying or demonstrating, because they might not be saying it to you and their actions might be demonstrating something very different.
It's completely giving that place. So if you're in a conversation with someone, and this is something we do from a coaching perspective, we don't actually talk a lot as coaches. We stay silent and we observe, and we let people fill the silence. And in that silence, often that's when the new thoughts and the new ideas can come from, rather than me trying to direct a conversation in a particular way. And so I think that's the same can be true in a leadership setting, having that silence, allowing people to, that what they say first might not be the real thinking. They might need to start to talk it through, and then new exploratory ideas will come through. But it's not just about that interpersonal conversations either. As a leader, it could be, what are you going through maybe the experience that your customers or your staff go through and learning or rather witnessing how they see things by experiencing it yourself. That can be a curiosity, because then you should be understanding, well, what's happening here? What's the reason that this happens? What's the benefit of this happening? Blah, blah, blah. Could be observing things, just sitting and looking at evidence that comes through and reports. So it's not just about the physical conversation, I suppose.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting, isn't it? Because maybe that's a reframe for people who are not as comfortable with being a curious leader, that maybe it's more about being a leader who learns. And learns about the things that are important to them and their organisation and their stakeholders. And some of that will be about that self-development piece in the truest sense of learning as well, won't it? That none of us are the finished article when it comes to being a leader. So actually part of being curious and being a leader who learns might be about developing skills and experiences that you maybe don't have yet, or you might be looking at other organizations and going and learning from them, shadowing people, through, like you say, through your coaching and mentoring. So I think there are quite a lot of aspects to that curiosity as a leader. And from the conversation that we're having, I think it does show that there are things that you can start to do. So if you feel like you're not naturally a curious person, that doesn't mean that you can't be a curious leader. There's lots of things that you can put in place to enable that and have a different mindset about it, which I think is brilliant. I wanted to move us into a slightly different space in this part of the conversation, because I just wanted to pose the question, or the situation, I guess, which is, what happens if you have lost that desire to be curious? So as a leader, maybe you see it as a core skill, as we've talked about, to be curious, but for some reason that curiosity doesn't seem to be there anymore. Is it a sign or symptom of something bigger? Like, how do you work through being in that headspace as a leader? Because I do think that happens, and I definitely have been in that position myself, and I've worked with other leaders who I've almost seen that happen to, and it has always felt like it is a sign or symptom of something else. But I'd be really interested to hear your views on it, Lee.
It's a leading question there.
I was, yeah. It was me going, "Are you okay?" rather than "How are you?" But the trouble is, I know that if you don't agree with me, that you'll be very comfortable in challenging me, because we have a very psychologically safe relationship.
So yeah, I it links to passion for what you're doing. For me, I think if you get into that space where you might not see it as I've lost curiosity, you might be saying, "Oh, it feels like Groundhog Day and I'm always doing the same stuff." And if you feel you're being passive and not being active in the way that you're leading, if you feel like you're a bit of a bystander, for me, they're all signs that you're checking out. And we've talked about that in previous episodes before, haven't we? And if you're checking out, I definitely think your curiosity will be impacted, because you're just not as invested in the outcome as you would be otherwise. So, I do think that you need to be aware of. One of my signs actually was, I wasn't excited or curious about the future in one of my organisations. So I didn't see myself being a part of it. And so I found it really hard to connect, and that curiosity absolutely wasn't there, because I just didn't think that it was my future. And so that was a big warning sign for me. And I think if you're an engaged and curious leader, you do need that forward focus. If you're someone that's just working in the here and now, or constantly looking back and trying to analyse what's happened, rather than that need to look ahead, I think you bring all kinds of bias into your thinking. You kind of get entrenched, don't you, into this faith, and the growth and the learning isn't there. So yeah, I think it can be really dangerous for yourself and for your organisation if you get into that space where you just are not, you might not see it as I've lost my curiosity, but the spark's gone somehow.
Yeah. And it's interesting, isn't it, to think about your warning signs, like if you recognise them in yourselves or other people, or if others recognise them in you. So I think that's like, you've got a lot of insight that you can tell, like, that was a point in my career when I had lost that curiosity because of this. And I guess, yeah, if I reflect on my own situation, the times when I feel like I've lost my curiosity or my spark or motivation, isn't it? It's about being motivated to do what you do, is probably when I've almost done the opposite. So rather than not seeing myself as part of the future, it's been about almost feeling sad at the loss of something in the past, as in like when it used to be like this, that's when it felt good here and I enjoyed it, and almost getting a bit stuck on what it used to be like in the good old days. So I guess, like you say, not being focused on the future, but with that slightly different reflection. So I think maybe it is important for leaders to have an opportunity to reflect on whether there's been periods in their career where they have lost that curiosity, that motivation, that passion, whatever we want to call it, just so that they can be aware of that should that happen into the future.
We all have our down days, don't we? I'm not expecting everyone to come skipping into work every day and singing
full of curiosity.
Yeah, there are days as an introvert, I did need time to kind of reflect and retract myself and have that space to think and all of that. You know, women just going through their monthly cycle of life have different energy levels and motivations. So all of those things can play into how your curiosity and how you might be feeling about a situation can ebb and flow over time. I think the issue and the warning sign is when that's sustained over a longer period.
Yeah, I would agree with you. When you're in a constant space where it feels like that's lacking, then that's probably the time to reconsider what your options are.
And when I said, like, one of my signs was Sarah wasn't excited or curious about the future, my main task at the time was helping an organisation to develop its future strategy. I mean, like, I couldn't get excited by it. That was like,
alarm bells. So we are getting to that point in the conversation where we probably should be thinking about wrapping up, and we've covered quite a lot, I think, in the conversation, and it's been more of an exploration maybe rather than the way some of our normal episodes go. But we always like a how-to, and you touched on some really great advice in the question about if you can learn to be curious. But my how-to for this episode is how do you demonstrate curiosity as a leader? So what would your top tips be?
So the questions and the types of questions are really important. Thinking about how you ask questions and then how you listen to understand. Those I think if you're going to work on any skill out of anything, those are the two to really work on that will benefit your leadership, totally across the board. So that would be my first point. I think my second point to that is then around, and we haven't really touched on this in the conversation, but it's about who you surround yourself with. We talked before around making sure you have a support network and people that aren't just yes peoples, that they're not confirming your biases, that kind of stuff. I think your curiosity comes the more diverse the people are around you and the thinking of the people around you. And there's evidence that says, obviously, the wider your network of people, the more diverse it's likely to be, particularly those you don't interact with a lot, because if you're not interacting with them a lot, they're not necessarily going to be aligned to your way of thinking or seeing things in the same way as you. So when you do then interact with them, they can bring stuff that's fresh and fresh thinking into a situation. So I think working on where your relationships lie, how diverse that network is and all of that, I think will really help you as well. And we talked about that learned behaviour. If you see people that are being inquisitive, you're more likely to be inquisitive. So I think that would be my third thing to work on from a leadership point of view.
I love it. And I have nothing extra to add because it's like you've read my own notes. So I was all for the questioning and the active listening. I guess the only addition I would say there, which we did mention in the conversation, is don't be defensive. I mean, we talked about not creating a defensiveness in others, but I also think for you to be curious, you have to be open and not be defensive. And I think again about that role modelling, it's encouraging others to be inquisitive and curious, isn't it? So it's how do you make that okay in your team and your organisation, which is totally about culture and psychological safety and that role modelling. And we've done episodes on psychological safety and culture and strategy. So I would definitely recommend, if you haven't listened to them, go and have a listen to those. So thank you, Lee. Thank you for allowing me to be curious in this conversation and find out more about your thoughts around curiosity and leadership. I feel a bit weird that it's like the end of episode 10, which is the end of this series.
No, it's going to be a sneaky bonus, though, isn't it?
Oh, there's always a sneaky bonus with us. We can't keep away. So, yes, keep your ears and eyes peeled for the sneaky bonus edition that will land at some point. I really hope people have found this episode and this series useful. So please do leave a rating, review, get in touch with us if there's anything that we've talked about that you are curious about or you want us to cover in future episodes. We will be back. We will be back for another podcast series, but we are also completely active over in our Substack community. So that's the place to go if you're going to miss us between series.
Yeah, we've got the book club to come. We're also doing private recordings over on Substack. So Ask Us Anything sessions. You can submit your questions on all things leadership or anything. Actually, happy to answer anything if you want some recipe ideas, book recommendations, watch on TV.
Yeah, anything about detective programs or books.
Yes.
Vinyl, it appears. Curiosity Killed the Cat. That was a reference I didn't think was coming in this episode. So yeah, pretty much ask us anything you like. We're going to be open-minded enough. We won't be defensive. Please don't judge us. All the learnings from How to Take the Lead. So on that note, get out there and take the lead until next time. Thanks for listening to today's episode.
Don't forget to hit follow and share the show with someone you know. Oh, that rhymes.
A rating or review will be much appreciated.
If you're looking for some leadership inspiration, why not get a free copy of our recommended reading list? Visit howtotakethelead.com to download.
Until next week, get out there and take the lead.